Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Pod and the Pendulum, the horror movie podcast covering all of the franchises, one movie and one episode at a time. I'm your host, Mike Snoonian, and I'm joined by two of my co-hosts and a special guest today. Up first from the Halloweenies podcast, The Losers Club, and Girls on the Boys, the podcast that covers Amazon Prime's The Boys. Now back for season 4, I believe it is. We have Miss Rachel Reeves. Rachel, how are we doing?
Hi, I'm so excited to be back. I know it's been a minute, but I'm excited to hop back on to discuss this next run of films that we're going to do, which is actually a bunch of little mini films. So yeah, this might be one of the most jam-packed seasons of all time if we count those all individually. Yeah.
Well, you've been to be fair to you, you've been like hundreds of millions of light years in space covering the Alien series, so it would be difficult for you to be back for these like little earthy.
That's true. I have been just hanging out on LV 426 for the last 6 months or so. So yeah, it took me a second to get back here.
Also with us from the Disenfranchised podcast, we have Stephen Foxworthy. Stephen, how are we?
I like you.
I like you too, Stephen. Wasn't creepy at all.
Good. That's what I was going for. Not creepy. No, doing great. Happy to be here. Am excited to start watching through some of this franchise for the first time, actually. So
excellent.
Yeah. Ooh, awesome.
And I love having your perspective because a lot of times these are like the first time watches for you, which is always great. So, well, you've brought a friend with you this time. You've brought a buddy. You've brought from your podcast, from the Disenfranchised podcast, your co-host joining us for the first time. We have Tucker. Tucker, how are we doing?
Hi, it's me, Tucker. How's it going?
It's going well. It's going pretty well.
Good. You guys, can I say I was excited to watch this movie again because I haven't seen it since it came out. And I remember really liking it, but this time, like, wow, it hit. It really hit. Like,
in a good way?
I was going to say, or just
in
hits
a really
differently.
good way.
Oh, okay.
And it might have been the time that has passed, and it might have been that I was sitting outside at around 2:00 in the morning watching it.
I mean, that'll do it.
That might have also, because it's so intimate, you know, it's so fly on the wall, a lot of it. And just be out there like, all I hear are frogs, you know? And then all this scariness happening right here and everything else is pretty quiet. Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Tucker. Welcome to the show. Love to have you in. Excellent. You're going to fit right in. Yeah. I think you're going to do fantastic. Well, we are here. I don't even think we've announced the movie yet, but we are here now to kick off a new series, and we are smashing together two genres. We are smashing together found footage and anthologies, two things that you wouldn't think would go together. But we are here to talk about the VHS movie series, now 6 films deep, along with like 2 spin-off like standalone movies as well. So I don't think we're going to be covering the spin-offs because they are just like standalone films and not part of the main series themselves. But we have 6 entries in this found footage anthology series to cover. And, you know, want to kind of kick things off with our initial thoughts here. And Rachel, this was your entry to The Wheel. And as longtime listeners know, The Wheel is how we set up our year, where everybody throws their pick on, and then we randomly spin the wheel at the end of the last year and decide the order that we're going to cover series. It's very scientific, very technical. A lot of thought goes into it. And Rachel, this was your pick. So what was it about VHS that made you what made you want us to cover VHS?
Yeah, so this franchise has always been so much fun for me. I'm fascinated by just the roster of talent that they've been able to assemble over the years. Like, I love getting a sneak peek at these creatives before they kind of break or are on the verge of breaking or whatever, and just kind of seeing their take on this theme. I do like how a lot of the standalone movies have a loose theme sort of uniting the style or the time period or whatever that the movies take place in. And the found footage gets me. Like, found footage actually really freaks me out a lot of the times. there's certain genres that just unsettle me more than others, and found footage is one for sure, especially if you're, you know, like Tucker, watching it outside. Like, I can't even imagine. That would scare me so bad. Like, outside with headphones on in the dark, like, that would be terrifying. And I can't say that about, you know, every genre of horror. And so I love just seeing what people come up with for these. And there is something nice too about an anthology. It's just, you know, you have these little segments. You're not invested in any way. It feels, even if the subject matter isn't light, you know, it's like, well, this is only going to last 20 minutes or so, and then we can move on to the next segment. So even if they're not all winners, there's something about every single installation in this franchise that I really enjoy. And so overall, it's just been such a, I don't know, a fun franchise. When a new one pops up, it's like, yes, absolutely, I will definitely watch that, no questions asked. So I'm excited to go through this journey all together with everyone and get everybody else's thoughts on it.
Yeah, it feels like a great series to like throw on in the background too of like a Halloween party.
Totally.
And just like keep the sound down, because you get so many weird visuals that just like pop up on screen now and again, where you don't even have to really be watching the movie closely to kind of follow what's going on. There's just a lot of weird stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Tucker, how about yourself, man? Like, what was it about that early watch and then also kind of rewatching this for the show before you came on, like 2 a.m. outside under the stars?
Well, I'll tell you, I was kind of hipster on Ty West, so he was my reason for seeing this movie when it came out, was because I knew Ty West was doing a segment on it. And by that time, I had seen Cabin Fever 2, and probably House of the Devil, and possibly Innkeepers as well. And so I was rearing to go. I was ready to get my Ty West on. And I saw it pretty much after it came out. I think I got like a free trial of Shudder or something, specifically for that reason. And then I stuck with the series for a couple more entries, and then I just kind of lost interest. Though after watching it again, I do kind of want to rewatch the ones I've seen and maybe watch the ones I haven't, especially since I've heard so many good things about the most recent one that came out, the one that came out last year, 95, I think it was.
Is it 85 or 95? I think VHS 85.
99.
I think is
the VHS name. Yeah.
99. There you go.
Yeah.
It's weird how the numerology goes. We'll figure it out. We'll get it right. Yeah. But the last couple of like had some pretty solid. The ones that have been like for Shudder have had some pretty solid segments to them, and the last one was pretty strong. Maybe the best one overall since part 2.
And also, something I noticed this time around is when I was watching the credits, I recognized all of the directors instead of just Ty West.
Yeah.
Because now all those motherfuckers are doing stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, you got Radio Silence in there. I didn't even know who Radio Silence was in 2012, you know?
Yeah, they were the ones that I think Bloody Disgusting and Roxanne Benjamin took a chance on. They're like, all right, we'll give you a segment in this. And then they ended up like closing the show. Like, they knocked it out of the park with their segment. You could argue that they've probably, maybe outside of Adam Wingard, now that he's had the 2, Kong versus Godzilla movies, they've had the most mainstream success out of everybody that's been on there between the 2 Scream movies, Abigail and Ready or Not. Like, they've become, out of everyone, like the biggest filmmaking I think duo or trio. I think there's like 2 directors and a producer. Right? I don't know. They keep multiplying.
Yeah.
You put water on them and they
come and go.
Pop up.
Sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 4.
Like Mogwise. Yeah.
Every once in a while, just one shows up. Like, I'm representing everyone today.
Yeah. But it's incredible because I remember watching this for the first time and knowing who Barrett and Wingard were, because I had heard of You're Next. I hadn't seen it yet, but I remember being very excited and anticipating that coming out because I had seen It's a Horrible Way to Die, which was a super exciting indie film that like the Boston Underground Film Fest had played. that was like, so I knew like already these guys had some chops. And I think like the most surprising thing about this movie was like AJ Bowen wasn't in it, because he was in like everything Ty West had done, everything that Wingard and Barrett had done. So he had appeared in all of these guys' movies. He was like the indie horror darling, and he's nowhere to be found in this. Like that is what jumped out the first time, like watching this movie. Like, where's AJ Bowen?
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Like he was in like everything. It's so funny. He's like an indie horror, that guy. He's like, he's just in everything around this time period. And I actually looked him up not that long ago, looking up some stuff on House of the Devil, and it's like, gosh dang, yeah, this guy is in so many different incredible movies, and I just always forget about him. So sorry, Ichi, but love your work.
He's always so good in everything he's in too. Like everything I've seen him in, he's just, I've never seen him bring in anything less than his A game. So even though he's not in VHS, he's, you know, absent but not forgotten.
He's there.
But you're right.
It's,
yeah, it's kind of like seeing all of these. It's like when U2 or like the Police would play small clubs in the early 80s. And I see Steven furtively typing over there. What's going on? No, it's no worries. It's like seeing them play small clubs. Like they're going to break big, and you're getting to see it for the first time. So, Steven, this was a first-time watch for you.
Yes, it was.
So what were your initial thoughts? Like this morning, it's Saturday, you got your coffee, you're sitting in front of the sofa, or on the sofa, not sitting in front of it, because that would be weird.
That's how my dad used to watch TV. He would sit like on the floor in front of the couch and just kind of rest his arm on where people would sit on the couch. So.
Oh, I do that when we have dinner in front of the TV.
There you go.
I guess that's not too weird. I was thinking you would be staring at the sofa, though, instead of the television.
I mean, that's half the shots in this movie are just like shots of the front of a chair. So, I mean, it works.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. That is a good point. What were your first thoughts?
So found footage is kind of a mixed bag for me. It's not a subgenre that I'm particularly like gung-ho about. I've seen a couple. I like the first Blair Witch. I think that's incredible. I really liked As Above, So Below. And from there, my mileage varies wildly. I think sometimes it can be done really well, and then sometimes you have Cloverfield. So, like, I'm kind of on the whole subgenre. This, I think there are moments that are done really well, moments that are not done quite as well that I would have liked to have seen done better. But I think this movie kind of embodies my mixed bag feelings about found footage. But I do really dig an anthology, particularly a thematic anthology. If you can get like a bunch of films around a similar theme that's trying to say something interesting, I'm totally on board with that. So I think some of these entries stand out more than others. Some really pack a punch, and others kind of whimper quietly in the corner. So I don't know. And I think probably a second watch through would probably change my mind on a couple of others. But yeah, overall I had a good time.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear like what you think really stands out. So I think what's different about this, when I think of like other very strong anthologies, I think of like Creepshow. I think of Mike Dougherty's Trick or Treat. And although those are like segmented movies, they come from one visionary. They come from one creator. So even though you might have like a different tone throughout them, like they're still coming from the mind of like really one creative. And here what you have are really like 5 separate, or really 4 separate short films with like a wraparound segment trying to kind of bind them very loosely together. So there's no glue that's trying to like keep them together.
Right.
Although like I know Tucker, you mentioned Ty West, like he tried to do a couple things tie them in. And he was very angry at like, not angry, but he would like rib Barrett and Wingard for stuff they left on the cutting room floor with their wraparound. He's like, you realize the shit you cut was the stuff that kind of tied everything together, right? So we'll talk about that when we get to his segment. So normally this is where we do the background, but there's not a ton on this. And I thought we might just like with the VHS movies, kind of wrap them into the segments because there's only a few things here or there. The one thing I'll mention is like this series came together because Bloody Disgusting, the horror site, horror podcasting network, like the go-to horror place, your kind of one-stop shop for everything horror. Like they were at this point, like launching their own, like film distribution site, for lack of a better word. And they wanted to get together some of the hotter names in indie horror. So site founder Brad Biska, along with producer Roxanne Benjamin, were able to bring these creatives together, like some young and up and coming directors, gave them a little money to put this together. And I believe it made its debut at Sundance in winter of 2012. And it had its usual, people are passing out, people are fainting in the aisle, people are vomiting, which, and even the filmmaker said they take that with a grain of salt. They're like, we think that might have been somewhat planted. Roxanne Benjamin, she's gone on to direct a few pretty solid indie horror movies, including Body at Brighton Rock. And then last year, There's Something Wrong with the Children, which is a really good like killer kid movie that I would strongly recommend you check out. Like a couple really good entries under her belt. But let's start with the wraparound. Let's start here with the segment that's going to kind of take you in and out of all these, called Tape 56, written by Simon Barrett and directed by Adam Wingard. And this was put together like as they were in pre-production for Your Next. They had a couple weeks to spare. I think part of it was actually shot in Simon Barrett's stepfather's home, and it was like in and around Barrett's hometown. So kind of a stressful time for them because they were, in production of like their first like big studio movie. So this was almost a way for them to blow off some steam. And I'm kind of wondering what y'all thought of this segment, like how does it wrap this? Does it really tie this film together? Does it bring the room together? Is one word to say.
I mean, kind of. Like, it explains these different tapes in a sort of interesting way. Kind of makes sense. I don't feel like it's 100% successful as like a wraparound thing. Also, I mean, it's a rough entry. Like, it's a rough takeoff into this film. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's kind of surprising to me that I actually like it. Because every time I start it, I'm like, oh yeah, this starts awful. Like this,
yes.
this whole.
Well,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I would say I just think that the beginning of the wraparound is really the only part that's effective at all, because it's really visceral and disgusting, and like awful and abhorrent. But like you're the camera, so what are you gonna do? You have to look at it. I think it kind of gets really kind of cliche and boring after that. Once they start watching the other tapes, I'm like, oh, we're in a horror movie now. Got it. Yeah. Instead of this really raw, weird thing we were doing first, we're just in a regular horror movie. Cool.
But what I
not to say that brought down the... Go ahead.
Oh, just what I will say about it, though, is it does, I think, really capture this moment in time in like a horribly authentic way is what I feel like. It feels like it captures that sort of early YouTube, like Jackass, like everybody's got a camera, but like pre-phones, like everybody using their phones for everything. Like I feel like it captures a moment in time really well. And I mean, I know even me and my high school friends were doing like, I'm sorry, we're not sexually assaulting people or I was going to say destroying property, but I was saying like we would videotape ourselves like soaping fountains in front of like the fancy neighborhoods and, like toilet papering our band teacher's house. Like, I guess we were actually destroying property now that I think about it.
But in an innocent, wholesome kind of way, right?
Yeah, a dumb high school kind of way. Or, you know, we would steal like the trays from McDonald's and like slide down like hills on it, or like try to like, you know, snowboard with them or something.
That's a gateway though. I think that's a gateway to
sexually assaulting women in parking garages. Oh boy. But, and so like, it is rough.
Got my eye on you, Rachel. I'm not sure anymore.
I think you're right though, Tucker. Like, it does like bring you in and you feel like you have to keep watching, and it makes you uncomfortable. It also makes these guys really unlikable instantly. Yeah. And so, you know, you don't want anything good for them. And so it makes it pretty satisfying when you see them getting destroyed in various ways. I will give it that.
It is that slasher movie thing where you want to make, at least to some degree, your main character is unlikable. So you don't feel too bad when you're rooting for the slasher to kill them all later on in the movie. And I think this movie does a very good job of setting up these guys as just being unlikable D-bags right from the jump. But I think in terms of its overall effectiveness, I want something more cohesive for this wraparound narrative. Like, it gives us an explanation for like where the tapes are coming from and why there are the tapes, but not really why there actually are the tapes. Like, what is this collection? Why does this guy have these things? Who are the mysterious benefactors that are hiring them? Like, these are the questions I want answered. And this movie is completely uninterested in answering any of those questions. I feel like that would be a really cool, larger question for the franchise. But from what I've read of the franchise so far, the franchise isn't particularly interested in answering that question either.
No, I don't think so.
No, it's an interesting conceit in terms of like, you basically have a house filled with snuff films.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is like a really interesting conceit and a really interesting idea. One that like you would love to see explored a little more. And then you kind of want to know, why are they luring these particular band of like jackasses into the house to punish them? Because like on all the other tapes, like none of them are tied to the house in any way. Like, they just happen to have gotten their hands on all of these tapes of people that have been murdered in certain ways, or people that have fallen prey to monsters in specific ways, but has nothing to do with the house itself. And then like whoever is in possession of this house has gotten their hands on the tape. So why are you luring this particular crew in, aside from the fact that they're like jackasses that deserve to be killed? But you wouldn't think that the people that are interested in gathering their hands on all of the snuff tapes are also going to be the kinds of folks that are like, let's dispense vigilante justice as well. Like, they're going to be too concerned with that. It's interesting going back and rewatching this in 2024, like after seeing this when it first came out, in how much like my own sensibilities of like watching movies have changed. Because I know, like, watching it when it first came out, I'm like, yeah, these are bad guys. And then just dismissing it, like not really focusing on that like too much. And then watching it now for the show and being like, man, this is really off-putting. Like, this might be a lot harder to get through than I anticipated it being, because we're 1 minute into this movie and there's like a pretty graphic, uncomfortable sexual assault that occurs on screen. And then like 2 minutes after that, there's like revenge porn that is like filmed and put on screen. I'm like, I don't remember this from 12 years ago, and I don't like this.
Yeah, well, and then they're talking about like, oh, we've done this like 25, 30 times. And sold it to porn site. And it's like, oh my God, this is... And they're like, oh, we should move to upskirt shots. Like, that's where the money is. It's like, wow, this is like terrible. This is terrible. These are terrible people. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of people just turn it off at that point nowadays. Or I would recommend fast forwarding it if that makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, 2024 Twitter would cancel VHS.
Yes.
Like one segment in, it would be completely canceled.
It's a thirsty movie. Like, the whole movie is real horny.
Well, and
I don't remember that about it. I don't remember it being like that. But normally I can be a bit prudish about that kind of stuff, just because, like, if it's not necessary, I don't really have any desire to see it. But if it helps the plot, or if it's like, you know, visually interesting or something, I'm way into it. And surprisingly, I didn't have a problem with it. because it all felt like it fit. Like, it feels gross to say that, but it felt like it fit this movie. Like, it was absolutely necessary for this movie to be incredibly horny.
Yeah, well, it kind of fits in with like the vibe. I think they're going, it's like you found this video, right? It's making you feel a little uncomfortable watching it. Like, I do think that's something that they were going for, to make you feel like you were watching something you shouldn't be watching. So I think it's successful in that. And if it was too watered down, it would kind of take away from just sort of the whole vibe and idea that they were going for. So I get that. As we go through these segments, I do think it's interesting, because I don't know if I would have laid out these segments in the way that I would have, or like how they are presented in the film. Like, I might have mixed them around to make it feel not quite as awful in some ways. But, you know, speaking specifically from like how they treat women and how the women are presented in this overall film, I've gone back and forth with it over the years. And so, yeah, I mean, we can talk about that more as we go through these, but I do think there's some interesting choices that are made, good and bad. So overall, it kind of leaves me neutral as far as that part of it's concerned.
Yeah. I appreciate what you just said there too, Tucker, about this feeling really thirsty, because it does really feel of its time. It does feel like the early 2010s were a bit more of that time. Like, I just remember, like, the jokes were in the air. Like, 30 Rock was doing jokes like MILF Island, and that would have been like a fairly popular joke. And it was like a time when it felt like every other week there was like some sort of like celebrity leaking their own like sex tape. And then like that would be like their launching pad into getting a reality show right around that time. And like people wouldn't think too much of it. Like, it wasn't that big a deal. It felt like a hornier time than it was right now. This is just a much grosser, more dirtbag version of it. Like, you're also kind of like coming at the tail end of Jackass. Like, this feels like if, you know, Jackass was not Johnny Knoxville and his crew, but if it was like recreated by your dirtbag cousins that are all on probation, they're like, well, what if we did our own Jackass? We'd be even bigger. And that's what the opening segment here just feels like to me. It's just very grody in that early 2010 sort of way.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Rachel.
Oh, do you remember, like, there was like that whole like bum fight videos, and like there was there were horrible things out there.
I lost so much money betting on bum fights, Rachel. So much.
Oh boy. But there was terrible stuff out there for real, like not fake stuff around this time. And I can't remember some of the other like title or like Faces of Death and stuff. Like, it was just the Wild West. I feel like it's like, oh, now the technology's here, we can distribute stuff this way. And it was just like, finally, I mean, this stuff has always been happening, right? Like, the world has always been awful, but it did feel like for a weird moment in time, everything was being just illuminated and distributed in a way that was kind of unprecedented. And thank God that went out of fashion relatively quickly, because not a good look.
Yeah. It feels so much more cleaned up now. Like, when you think of like, everybody is filming themselves now for TikTok or Instagram or whatever, but it feels like a much more cleaned up. Like, I'm doing this to go viral. I'm doing this to create my own brand and create my own followers, and I can kind of monetize this in some way. Whereas like what you see here, for as dirty as it is, it feels a lot more authentic. It feels like what people were doing at that time when they could record everything for the first time. Like, they were recording all the stupid shit they would do completely unedited, with like no sense of like, what if somebody else happens to see this some way? Like, what are people going to think about it? We were hanging out last night watching the Celtics, and I brought my daughter with me, and I was with one of my best friends, and she looked at my daughter and she's like, you know, what I liked about your dad is he never gave a shit what anyone thought of him. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, he would go to punk shows wearing a wrestling mask, holding signs saying, I will wrestle for food. And that's what he would do. And like, it was awesome. Like, people would be like, this guy is awesome, but it didn't exactly, as my friend said, it didn't exactly bring in the babes, you know? is how she put it gently. And she was right, but like I just didn't care. And that's what this feels like. Like these guys don't care who happens to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I think the first few segments in particular spotlight this. There's this almost voyeuristic quality to, I think, found footage movies in general, but especially, I feel like it's especially played up in these first few segments where it's the thing that's, I think, in equal measure transgressive and exciting about these kind of things that you would find. Like, you're happening upon these tapes and they contain this kind of wild, illicit stuff. And there's this idea that you're watching something you're not supposed to. And there's something very transgressive and exciting about that all at the same time. And I think particularly this segment, Amateur Night, and Second Honeymoon really play that up to great effect in a way that I think maybe the last few segments don't quite do as well.
Okay. No.
Well, all those that you just mentioned, Stephen, kind of makes me think what we were talking about a minute ago about like how did they get these tapes? That's what I want the next VHS movie to be. VHS ? And it'll just be like the tail end, just how every tape was gotten. Like the girl in the woods with the glitch. Like where'd they find that tape? And Second Honeymoon, who gave them that tape? One of the ladies? Like, I want to know. I got to know because some of them not only seem impossible or unlikely, but other ones seem really interesting. I would like to find out how they got these tapes.
Rachel, you're part of the Losers Club, and there's a handful of Stephen King stories. Like one of them I can think of is like The Breathing Method, part of different seasons, where it's set in that like old school, like English gentleman's club, where it's like posh. You can just picture it like with like it's leather and suede and bookcases from floor to ceiling, and they gather there to tell ghost stories. And you know very little about any of the members. All you know is the gentleman that, like basically the butler and caretaker of it, that he's been there forever. Like it seems like he's been there since it's opened, although that seems impossible. And I've always wanted King to return to that, to like, where did this come to be? How did this come to be? But you know that he never will, because that might ruin the magic of it. And that feels like that here as well. Like, you're right. How are you getting your hands on these tapes that are left in the middle of nowhere? And like, what is the method to the madness of selecting everything here?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think about it that way. You're right. There is like that element of kind of that just ancient way of telling stories, right? And passing things down through these stories and gathering around the campfire. And that's what, you know, like in The Breathing Method or Ghost Story, like what is it, the Chowder Society or whatever, just telling these stories, trying to freak each other out. Like that's what we do. And this is a very of the time now, but at the time it was a modern way of doing that, just telling these awful stories like, oh, did you see this tape? Did you see this video? Like, and so that's what I love about this, is that it does feel like it captures that moment so well, even if some of the things that it's talking about and showing are awful, but that's like, well, that's the world we were in. So that's fair.
Well, let's move to the next segment, and I'll start with you, Rachel. Let's move to Amateur Night. Which is directed by David Bruckner, who would go on to do, I believe, The Ritual, which is a Netflix film, which is pretty solid, but also was the man behind like the Hellraiser reboot, like the really solid Hulu Hellraiser reboot, like the guy that kind of made Hellraiser relevant again after years of like direct-to-video obscurity. And Rachel, you had started, or you had said a few moments ago, how you wish some of these segments were kind of reordered a little bit in terms, especially because of the way that they present some of the characters or situations. So I'm wondering how you felt about how this one is presented, especially as it's like directly follows what we saw in the wraparound or the introductory segment.
Yeah, I don't know. I would not have put this one first, because I do feel like it's a bit rough to have like that issue of sexual assault in the first one and then just feeling gross, these guys talking about all that. And then to go right into this that also deals with sexual assault and, you know, date rape and sort of these just disgust. It's like too groups of disgusting guys going out with the goal of perpetrating awful things against women. And so it just feels very much like too much back to back. That would not have been my choice. I would have put this, I don't know, just not there. I would have started either with like the Emily one or honestly any of them other than this. that would have been my choice.
Aside from the radio silence segment, it's really hard to find one where the men aren't douchey.
Yo, in this one though, I actually laughed and I felt bad because it was during the scene where they were trying to have sex with those ladies, but I laughed because they're such assholes. But then dude's like, oh, she's passed out, and he's like, oh shit. Like, they're assholes, but they won't have sex with an unconscious lady.
Some lines,
that's where they draw the line. That's where they fucking draw the line.
Anyone, correct?
Yeah, and I laughed just because the way they present them, like, I don't want them to, but the way they present them, you're like, they're not gonna have a problem with that. But then they're like, nope, and I'm like, respect, I guess.
Well, the thing is, like, I do think that one guy, like, if he was alone, because he was like,
oh, if he weren't accountable, he would have done it anyway.
If his friends weren't like,
mad.
Dude, no, like, what are you doing? Like, he probably would have, but like his other friends were, no, she's passed out, dude. You can't do that.
But they have no problem filming themselves without the women knowing because they're using these weird hidden spy camera glasses.
Glasses,
yeah. So like, we'll absolutely film the act without anyone's consent whatsoever. But, she's passed out on the bed. So I guess it's good that there are levels, but like those levels probably need to go back a few degrees to be considered, ethical in any sort of way.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a very murky morality here. Yeah, like you said, the fact that we're willing to film them without consent, but if they're not able to consent to the, the sexual act, well, then that's too far. Because we could go to jail for that. I don't know. You could probably go to jail at this time, right? For filming somebody without consent if they found out about it. I would imagine you could.
No.
But yeah, it's all just kind of gross. But there are some moments of like those glasses are. I just kept thinking he looked like Ben Folds 5.
Oh yeah,
yes. I thought that too. I was like, Ben Folds has a threesome. That's what this one's called. Ben Folds has a threesome. Almost.
I thought he looked like Rivers Cuomo from Weezer.
Also an acceptable answer, yes.
A combination of the two. Or kind of, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Diary of the Dead, but the nerdy kid in that one, he kind of looks like that kid because he has the same kind of glasses and they're like the same frame.
It's so dorky. Also, just the idea seems so weird in general. Like, sorry guys, but guys are weird. Like, you guys are really gonna like bone down on these girls in the same hotel room. I guess, I don't know. Maybe I've just lived a more sheltered life, but that does not sound like a fun night out. It sounds weird.
It is not an appealing thing to just watch other people bone and watch your friends get down with one another. That is like if you've ever been at a party where you like walk in on two people that are going at it and they're your friends, like you don't stand there and be like, oh, well, let me just like pull up a chair here and
mind if I hang out?
Yeah, I was gonna play a few rounds of COD, and like while you guys don't mind me whatsoever, and maybe I'll throw in some advice.
I won't bother. Yeah.
But it's just like not what you want to see. And I think what really pulled the scene together at the end was you have the one friend who's giggling the whole time. Like he's so fucked up and drunk that he's like just naked on the couch, laughing at absolutely nothing for a good solid 5 minutes, which really added to the uncomfortable creepiness and hilarity of the situation.
I also it was so funny watching them go to this bar, and I loved how we had one girl who does seem like she was a party girl. She was having fun, she was down for it, but obviously just drank too much and was out for the count there. And then, but also just the fact that they picked up this other girl, this mystery, very odd, intriguing girl with these giant eyes who's acting odd from the get. She is
right.
She's weird, but the fact that these guys don't care, oh, you're you're a female and you're willing to hang out with us, sure, let's feed you some cocaine, let's get you drunk. Like, we don't actually care about you or your personality or anything about you. But if, you know, whether or not you're willing to, like, come and have sex with us.
Right.
And,
Oh, what? You're vulnerable and susceptible to our suggestions? Sure,
yes,
come along.
come on in, hop in the car.
Let's go. Fucking A.
And so, yeah, just like bringing her back, like the whole thing is like so weird, but also feels very like authentic in some ways. But you know what? That's what they get. That's what they get for not just paying attention to any of the giant red flags waving at them from the moment they meet this woman.
And let's be honest, like it's not like this is not how a lot of men act, right? Like this is this is a very bro-y movie. I mean, like that's what really jumped out rewatching. This is like a super brosif type of movie, and it's not like what you're seeing here even feels like exaggerated in a lot of ways. Like it's like, no, this actually just feels like, oh, it's Friday night, and it's like a handful of college dudes are gonna go out of the town, and the only thing they have in mind is like, we're going to get laid, and it's going to be no strings attached. It's going to be no frills, and we don't care. We've got money, we've got drugs, and we can make pretty much anything happen if we have those two things. And there's like unlimited liquor. So we can absolutely make it happen if we want to make that happen. So it's not like this is a really exaggerated situation. The only thing that makes it that is the fact that they pick up a succubus. I mean, that is really
I love it.
Probably,
So
I don't
fun.
know how things are like in the rest of the country, but like that's not typical up here.
I mean, I think it depends on what bars you're hanging out in, honestly. I'd love the introduction of her before we actually meet that character, because she's literally in the back of like 3 shots just staring at the dude with the glasses. And if you're not paying attention, you don't pick up on it. And it's so effective. I think they do that in, they use a similar trick in As Above, So Below as well. But it's one of the things that I like when a found footage movie does something like that, because it immediately latches on. And she is so good. She's so effective doing it feels like she's doing so much and so little all at the same time. But whatever she's doing, it works out so well, because she is absolutely incredible in this segment. I think she's easily the standout.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it all seems so sincere, too, her acting. Like, I believe all of it.
Yeah.
Because from the beginning to the end, even the last time you see her, like, she truly is vulnerable. Like, it doesn't seem like she's necessarily trying to trick these guys, because I don't think she's figured out what she is or what she does. I feel like a lot of this is her figuring out how to do her thing. And like when he rejects her at the end and she goes and cries, I feel like that's very sincere. And then she has a moment to where like, wait a minute, I could snap this motherfucker in half. And then, you know, it's like you're going through her thought process through the whole segment. And it's really interesting, I think.
And Hannah Fierman, who played the role here, like I loved her in this. Like I won't lie, I had such a crush on her after seeing her in this role. Like wanted to see her in like way more things. And I know that she reprised this role in the spinoff, which is called Siren, which I haven't seen. But like the studio wanted to recast it, and I think the director insisted on her coming back and replaying this role. She really made it her own here. And you know, one of the things I noticed that is grody as the men are, and is like unsure of herself as she is, like she still does kind of display a bit of her own agency. Like when one of the men like approaches her to kind of jump in on the action, like she pushes him away. She's like, nope, like this guy's all right, this guy's all right, but I don't want any part of it. And she like definitely pushes him away, like despite her kind of like mimicking human behavior and not really fully understanding it. Like she knows enough of herself to understand attraction and who she's like willing to mate with and who she's not willing to mate with, you know. And then that dude ends up getting his penis ripped off because he's adamant about being the aggressor.
As soon as he stands up, she looks straight at the camera guy and goes, no. Like it's immediate.
Yeah.
It does feel more primal in that way, how it's just like like, no, you're not a good mate. Like, you're not the alpha. You're just sitting on the couch being an idiot, laughing
just
the whole
giggling.
time. You know, the other guy is clearly like more of the alpha, but she actually really likes, you know, Ben Folds. And like he's kind of like, she finds herself like attracted to him. And actually, yeah, it's so sad when he's like, it's not that he's not interested, it's that he's terrified and his arm is broken. But obviously she's not quite processing that, and she's just like, oh, you just don't like me. And it's like, that's only part of it.
Right.
But, sorry, lady.
And his 2 friends are dead.
Yeah, oh yeah, and there's that.
Minor detail.
Probably wondering, like, are we going to get the deposit back on this room? Like,
no.
You know, the state they left it in.
I do love how gory and bloody and violent it gets at the end. I do think it takes a little bit too long to get there, especially considering like the setup we get with the wraparound narrative. It takes like a while to finally get there. And it's only, other than her being weird, it's not until you see like that shot of her feet that you really know like, oh no, something is very off with her. Mm-hmm. And so I wish they had kind of, you know, moved it along. I don't think we needed quite so much setup with them to get to that point. But other than that, once she starts, you know, showing her true colors, I'm all in at that point.
Yeah. It's a pretty solid segment. It's a good way to kick things off. I definitely agree with you, Rachel, that like spending so much time with this trio right after spending all that time with the guys at the beginning of the Tape 56 segment is a hard sell. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't know if I could spend this much time with this many dirt bags for like 90 minutes. That admit's a little bit rough, but the end of this one really redeems it. And then we kick off into Second Honeymoon, written and directed by Ty West, who would be coming off of House of the Devil. And I believe The Innkeepers was already out by this time, like his follow-up. Which was shot like kind of in our neck of the woods here. But before The Sacrament, which I think he was filming or prepping for like right when this was coming out. But, you know, Ty West has gone on. He still stayed indie, but now he's working with like A24 and he's done X, Pearl, and I think Maxxxine is going to be like one of the sleeper hits of the summer. It feels like people are really, really primed for Maxxxine coming out in a few weeks here. I'm a little nervous because I'm going to be in the UK when that comes out, and the way that theatrical distribution has gone, I worry that by the time I come back in a couple of weeks, it'll be like out of every theater and only on demand. And I really want to see this one in theaters as well.
Same.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I love Ty West, but I know, Tucker, you really love Ty West. So give us your initial thoughts on Second Honeymoon.
Well, I feel like when I watched it this time, I didn't remember any of the segments. Like, last time I watched this was 12 years ago, and it didn't really make that much of an impression on me. And so I didn't remember whose was whose. But as soon as this came on, and the characters started talking to each other, I was like, "Oh, this is Ty West."
What gave it away?
Ty West, it's subtle, but Ty West has his own kind of style of dialogue, and I think it kind of comes from him also being an actor and having sort of a history in improv as well. I think the way that he writes dialogue it's very unique, though it's not extremely noticeable. It's kind of like Yoko Ono screeching in the back of that John Lennon Christmas song. Like, once you notice it, you know it's there. But before you notice it, like, life is great. Like, you could just not hear it for years. And then all of a sudden, one day, it's the same thing with Ty West dialogue. Like, it doesn't, until you notice it, it's not noticeable. That sounds really dumb. But I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's a really bad way to describe it.
I don't think anyone wants to get compared to the vocal stylings of Yoko Ono. Like, I'm not sure anyone would take that as complimentary, you know?
No, in a positive way.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a good way to spin that, but go ahead, have at it.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that it's not like that's a negative thing. Once you notice that, it kind of ruins the song for you. But that's not the point. What I mean is, like, once you notice it, it's always there, whether it's good or bad. And for Ty West dialogue, it's good. And once you notice it, you always recognize it. And even as far back as Cabin Fever 2, like, I can hear it in that as well. So probably about 2 or 3 minutes into this, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure this is the Ty West one. Pretty sure.
That's what he would have been doing at this time when this came out. Cabin Fever 2. His Alan Smith film.
I would say a movie that he has disowned, but gosh, if his version was better, like, I want to see it because I liked the shitty version.
Okay.
I liked the version that the studio cut to hell. Like, give me the really good version. Like, if that's good shit, come on, let's go.
Innkeepers did come out right before this, and Sacrament came out the year after. So Cabin Fever 2, though, did get squashed between House of the Devil and the Innkeepers.
Well, okay. So, yeah, it was completed, though, in, like, 2009, I think, and then it got shelved. Yeah. And then once House of the Devil came out, they were like, put it out there. Get this, you know,
okay,
Ty West guy. So
I'm off track.
That was his first film, his first feature-length.
Yeah, like, no, there was The Roost. There was The Roost.
Yeah, there was two. There was, like, the Trigger Effect, I think.
Trigger Man and Roost.
Trigger Man, yeah, is that what it? Trigger Effect,
like,
I think, is a completely different movie.
Yeah, those are, like, self-produced films. Yeah. That's why when
Roost
I was
is really
saying,
good.
Like, yeah.
Roost is fantastic. If you haven't seen The Roost, it's fantastic.
That's the one with Tom Noonan, right?
Yes, playing like a horror host. It's a lot of fun.
Love Tom Noonan.
I will just say, go ahead.
I do think that you're right, though. Like, there is that, like, that naturalism and that, like, very authentic, free-flowing dialogue, and that kind of, that sort of, he takes his time, and that's what I always appreciate about Ty West is, like, he's willing to take the time, to take the moment to actually set the stage and let these characters breathe, and that really, it always gives them such a sense of feeling real, and I think that he's able to achieve that here really quickly. Also, the fact that he's using Joe Swanberg and Sophia Takal, like, people that are friends of his, who have obviously gone on and done incredible things in their own right. I feel like that's also a very Ty West thing. I mean, yeah, Greta Gerwig is in House of the Devil, so you know, like, he's always been one to pull in his friends and do cool things and have people involved in his projects that obviously go on to be incredible creatives on their own. And so, yeah, this just reeks of Ty West. And then the pacing, the fact that it feels like a lot of nothing until suddenly it's very much something.
Yeah.
And then once you have that subtext, once you have that realization, you go back and that boring part, you watch it again, not so boring because you're like, oh, I see.
It's loaded with all this kind of unspoken subtext, and that's something that I really like about Ty West as a filmmaker is everything is imbued with meaning, and I think that's really, really apparent in this segment in particular.
Yeah, and when you go back and rewatch it, like, because on its face, this looks like a relatively happy couple, like they're smiling together. They are vacationing. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of tension between the two. And if anything, you know, you would call this like not home invasion, but like hotel invasion horror, like where someone is coming in and it feels like, and I could not remember how this segment ended when I was rewatching it. And in my mind, I'm like, does this end with like both of them being serial killers and they turn the table on this hitchhiker? Like, that was what was in my mind somehow. It was like that they somehow were the nasties and they were actually more of a danger than this hitchhiker. Like, that's what I remembered in my like fever brain of like, that's what happened here. And then when you rewatching it again after the rewatch, you see the little hints, like just the fact that they don't sleep in the same bed as one another, that they sleep in separate beds as a couple that are on like a second honeymoon with one another, that there's that hint of anger and of distrust when he can't find his $100 and he's like, when did you take my money and what did you buy? And he doesn't believe her. Like, he's adamant that she stole from him. It's never a thought that like maybe he dropped it somewhere or put it somewhere else. He doesn't even bother to look anywhere else. Like, he's just insistent that she took it And even little things like her, when he's like, I think we should go to Vegas on the way home. It's just, yeah, whatever you want to do. Like, there's no even discussion.
You'll be dead.
Because, like, you'll already be dead by then. It doesn't matter. So little things like that. Like, she's checked out.
Can I tell you, I think you skipped over, I think, what is the most disturbing scene in this film, full of disturbing, gory, nasty shit. There's no violence, no gore, is when he's trying to get her to have sex with him and she won't, and he just keeps pressing the issue.
Oh, yeah.
That makes my fucking skin crawl.
Oh, it's horrifying.
Just imagine, like, being her, just like, no, and she has to be nice because he's bigger than her, you know? Like,
welcome to being a woman.
Right?
This feels...
Being a woman makes my skin crawl.
It is, you know, like, this whole movie just has some very interesting treatment of women in various capacities and different levels of sort of entitlement and presentations of women and their bodies in general. But but just the fact that she's like, sure, I'll do whatever, like, I'll do all of this stuff off camera, but like, no, that's not, that's not the thrill.
And that's
a
compromise too. Like, she doesn't even really want to do it at all.
Oh yeah, she doesn't want to do it at all.
That's her compromise,
Yeah, exactly.
So she's gonna have to do that just to get him to shut up and leave her alone, and that is.
I will also say that the part when they're being filmed while they're sleeping is genuinely so creepy. That makes my skin crawl, and just the idea that would be happening. I do find it a little hard to believe that they wouldn't wake up, but it makes more
light,
sense.
Right?
The light and
so bright,
and the knife. But it makes a little bit more sense once you realize we get to the end, and it's like, well, she probably knew, or I don't know. I don't know. Do you guys think that she knew that she was in there doing that at that time?
I mean, did she get in through a window, or did she...
Like, did she let her in and she chickened out or something? And maybe that was when she was supposed to kill him, but she couldn't quite do it. And then
that might have been the dry run.
Yeah.
The first night might have been the dry run to see if he wakes up. And then the second night would have been like the actual act at that point. Like, all right, night one is a practice, and then you go ahead with night two.
Yeah, maybe.
Can you guys imagine that, though? Like, you're on vacation and you're not an abusive asshole and you're actually a happy couple and you're doing your vacation video. Then one day you're like, hey, roll it back to that one part. And you roll it back and, like, all of a sudden you're both on camera asleep.
Horrifying.
Can you imagine how fucking terrifying? That's just, like, I would just die. My heart would stop and I would die right then. Oh, gosh. Whew, so unsettling.
That would be hard. What do you think of, like, the toothbrush gag? Does that play as funny to you?
It's kind of like it's like in the Marvel films where you have a really serious scene and then someone says something funny to kind of let everybody breathe. I felt like that was that, because that was a very, very, like, tense scene. And then she does it with a toothbrush and you're like, oh, but that is funny though. Like, I could breathe and, like, laugh for a second and not have to be completely terrified and uncomfortable.
Well, then you see him in the very next scene coming out of the bathroom just vigorously brushing, not just like casually, but no, just like going at it with everything, brushing his teeth.
He's taking off layers of enamel at that point.
I mean, that's the payout. That's the big laugh moment for me, is when you see him come out of the bathroom with that toothbrush in his mouth, just going to town on those molars. Like,
that also feels like a very Ty West thing to me, the idea about what we know because we're watching, but the character doesn't know. Like, we know more than them just because of our point of view, and that's one of those moments. And once you get to the end, it makes more sense. It does feel a little out of place if we're only going, based off of what we know so far at this point. Like, why would this person, is that just because he said no and didn't want to give her a ride? Like, why would this person do that? But when you get to the end, it makes more sense because, well, that's her, her girlfriend's douchebag husband, and she's like, yeah, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Well, and I like how this is the title of Second Honeymoon's a nice little play on words, because the two women are going to go off and have, like, presumably I guess, continue the vacation. Like they're going to dig a hole and bury Joe Swanberg's corpse in the middle of the desert somewhere. And you kind of got to imagine like they're going to have their own little vacation for the rest. And it's like their own little honeymoon at that point. Mm-hmm. So it's a second honeymoon for Sophia Takal's character, which I think is kind of nice. Like it's a nice little play on words over what we think of as a typical idea of a second honeymoon. Mm-hmm. You mentioned, Tucker, like the idea of like violence and how quick it occurs. And that is like a hallmark of Ty West, how it is so unexpected. You know, I go back to House of the Devil and that scene in the graveyard between A.J. Bowen and Greta Gerwig, where, you know, he shoots her in the face like completely unexpectedly, like how shocking that moment was. And like you get that moment here where like you have that second nighttime scene and then Joe Swanberg is like stabbed in the throat, and it's so quick and there's almost no setup to it that like the violence is, it kind of makes you suck your breath in because it just happens so quick and unexpectedly. And I think that is, and it continues to this day, like X and Pearl aren't necessarily the most violent movies, but the violence that occurs happens often very quickly when we least expect it.
I think something that Ty West really excels at, excuse me, is making violence straddle that line. Because in cinema, you really have two main types of violence. You have your fun, comic book, silly, we're having a good time violence. And you have your gritty, this is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable and not want to see violence, like realistic violence, where you're like, oh shit, that's fucked up. And Ty West is so good at straddling that line. I don't know if anybody else can do it like he does, honestly. Because you're simultaneously entertained and like just like wowed and amazed and also disgusted and shocked. And, you know, sharply inhaling, gasping, if you will, you know, while still having a great time. I don't know if anybody else can do it like he does, honestly.
It feels like he's spent his career trying to recapture the visceral thrill of Leatherface's introduction into Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which to this day is like still the best character introduction and one of the all-time best jump scares ever in a movie. And he's not necessarily trying to recreate that moment per se, but trying to recreate that feeling as an audience member in terms of like how shocking that moment is and how it makes you feel as an audience member to see something that shocking, that he's still chasing that throughout his movies. And I, for one, am here for it. I love that that's one of the things he really brings to the table. Like that is, to me, not a bad thing to aspire to.
Agreed.
He's just so fucking good. Like I love Ty West. He's just so good.
You're telling me.
I'm not telling you. I mean, you already know. We're agreeing.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Second Honeymoon before we move on?
I like it was a small detail, but it was one that I noticed to go back to what Tucker calls the creepiest scene in all of VHS, the scene where he's trying to get her to like film herself without her sweatshirt on. And then
I missed this. I don't know how I missed this detail. You
probably blacked it out because it was so disturbing and upsetting.
I might have been getting a snack. I honestly may have been getting a snack.
Mike. But when she's filming the girlfriend like cleaning up after the murder, and you get the reveal that they're lovers, and she lifts the mask and they kiss, and she films herself in the mirror. She's filming herself in just her bra, and she's doing it herself, kissing this woman. And it's this incredibly, I thought anyway, this incredibly empowering moment between the two of them.
Notice that.
And it's like, it's her consenting to showing herself in a way that she wants to be shown in that moment. And that I thought was really fucking cool.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Ty West makes movies like onions, you guys. There's just so many layers.
Yeah.
So many.
I just thought it was a bad idea to film yourself murdering your husband.
Well, I mean, she does ask, did you erase it? So,
oh yeah, she's like,
you did erase it, right?
Sure.
Like, which I think is,
sure I did.
That's another one of those, I think it's a funny button to the end. Like, did you erase it? Like, yeah, we did it. We got away with it. You filmed it. You took care of that, right? Obviously not, because we just watched it, but yeah.
Yep. All right, let's move on to Tuesday the 17th, which I think, again, another clever title, play on Friday the 13th here.
Yeah.
This one's directed by Glenn McQuaid. Yeah, a couple days after, when you come back from a long weekend. Yeah. So it's directed by Glenn McQuaid, who he directed I Sell the Dead, which is kind of a horror comedy take on like the Burke and Hare grave robbings. A lot of this was shot on Larry Fesseden's property, which I found like a nice little detail.
That guy's everywhere.
He really is. He's really,
and
like,
he does everything too. Like sometimes you see him as an actor. Sometimes he's like, I think I saw him doing transportation on something the other day. I was looking up. This boy is just everywhere.
He's like the Robert Evans of indie horror.
I mean, that's a perfect analogy. Perfect. Yeah. Love his IMDb picture too, with his hair just kind of.
Yeah, it's
fantastic.
Just really. Yeah, and I think that like you see that it's a really good note there. You see that picture of him, and he kind of like allows himself, I think, to be portrayed as kind of like a little bit of a goof. But the dude's incredibly savvy. This like what he's built with like I think Wild Eye Picks, like with like the amount of persons he's like given like creative opportunities to, in like what he's been able with his own like writing and directing to create with like very little money. He knows how to maximize like a picture with very small resources. Like he's pretty awesome, and then to let them like, all right, just come on my property. And I think like on the commentary, they said like one of his many properties, like one of the many properties Fesseden's owned, he allowed them to use it for this. The producers of VHS, like they really pushed for a slasher segment. They were like, look, we got to have at least one slasher segment in this movie.
That's fair. And put it in the middle too. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because I feel like right around this time is when there was like a lot of talk, like they were going to reboot Halloween again as like a found footage movie, and Friday the 13th was going to be.
They did that with Resurrection,
found footage. Kind of, sort of. Like they had some
sort of
found
like a
footage.
They were doing like the web show of it, but it still was like that. You had the shaky cam sort of where the actors are holding the cameras sort of deal.
But there was like talk of like straight up doing a Friday the 13th movie as a found footage movie at this point, like just completely from start to finish, which I don't think would work that great.
I mean, within the right hands, anything can work, honestly.
Sure.
But I agree with you. I doubt that it would get to the right hands. It would probably be garbage.
That's interesting to hear that they insisted on, having this segment. This is my least favorite. I don't know how you guys feel. Not that it's awful, but it is my least favorite. It feels
tell us why.
It feels like almost too effects heavy. It does feel like I understand what they're doing, and like, yes, these characters are very like silly. Their dialogue is silly. They feel a little like very tropey and stereotype of a slasher. So I get that. I don't know. I guess maybe because it is a slasher segment, I know what I'm going to get for the most part.
Yeah. This feels like Mixtape Massacre, the movie. Like super cookie cutter. Yeah, super cookie cutter. Very tropey, very the cheerleader and the final girl and the jock and the dirty guy. Like channeling your Crispin Glover from Friday the 13th Part 4. Right here.
Or just Crispin Glover in general.
I don't want to walk that close to the sun.
No, dude, don't do it. No.
I don't hate it. Like, there's moments I really do think are kind of cool, and I believe that they sell the kind of, techno found footage sort of angle to it decently well. I enjoy that she's like, why can't I film you? I think that that's kind of interesting. The idea that she can see him, but it's not like translating to the actual camera, giving it this sort of otherworldly, supernatural idea, which obviously so many of the slashers have, right? So they come back time and time again, and it makes zero sense. And so I do think it explores that idea in an interesting way. But I think, just because it is so expected and does follow the formula that we all know so well, I'm less intrigued by it. I'm less surprised by it. I'm less scared of it.
Well, I think that's
the other segments.
I think that's actually a good thing because, I agree with you, Rachel, that this is the weakest of all of them for me. I think it's perfect where it is because it's right in the middle of the movie. You've been having these wild experiences up until this point, and then you just get to kind of sit back and relax in your comfort zone. You're seeing something you've seen before with a pretty unique twist on it. It's pretty by the numbers outside of that. It's just a nice little, it's a palate cleanser. It's like when you go to a steakhouse and you have your salad and they give you that soup to like cleanse your palate before you eat anything else. True. That's what this is.
Yeah.
It's certainly not the best. In fact, it's the worst. It's not bad, but I think where it sits in the film, it works perfectly.
Yeah, I agree.
This is when I should have gotten my snack.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you would have guessed, you would have been like, oh, I know what happened based on what's happening now. Because I've seen a horror movie.
Well, what do you think, Steven?
It does all of, I do agree. This is either dead last or next to last for me. Like it's a toss up for me between this and the next segment, the Emily alien segment.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay.
But for me, I think one of the weaknesses of it is its adherence to the formula without doing much to shake it up outside of the glitchy aspect of it, which I would like to see explained more. Again, not to be that guy, but I think one of the biggest flaws is that we're sticking so closely to it, but we have to, it's an anthology piece. So everything's very truncated. Like we're not trying really to do anything new or anything interesting with the concept. But it's also shortened that we've got these we have to kill these kids in 20 minutes or less. So let's get going here. And we already wasted 10 minutes on the setup. So we got to go. We got to move. Let's go. I don't know. That part of it, I think, is really maybe one of the weaker parts of an already fairly weak segment.
I also thought that the main gal, the gal that was setting it all up, and like, I don't know if she was possessed by the killer at the end, or anyway, the girl with the black hair, I can't remember her name.
Wendy.
But like, no offense to her, but she was kind of the least believable actor in this whole film. And I feel like she's really supposed to kind of carry this segment. And I don't think she does a very good job. And I'm sure that's not her fault. I'm sure she's a wonderful actress. Just maybe the material wasn't right or the director didn't do what they were supposed to do. But she just, it doesn't work for me. It all seems like really not phoned in, but just phony. It all seems phony. Like it's she's wooden. Acting. I don't believe it. Wooden. Yeah.
It's wooden and it's just weird. The idea that like she's bringing her friends up there to literally be killed.
Right.
These people that it seems like they're kind of friends. But the fact that, she's telling them different things and the fact that she tells that dude, like, you're all going to die here seems very odd. Like, I would have liked her to seem a little bit more remorseful and, like, I don't know, doing it, but maybe a little bit more conflicted about doing it. And maybe her friends being like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Like, what's the matter? And maybe because it's very odd that she would just bring them up there and then is so calloused about them getting dispensed with.
Right.
What if the Ahab was the final girl? I think is really what this boils down to. Like the Ezekiel kind of prophet character, the doomsaying prophet character is also the final girl. Because she's the one that knows everything, but she's also the one that survives. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, it's also marred, like you mentioned, there's a lot of digital effects. There's a lot of digital effects in this one, including like digital blood. And that really mars it. And it's really obvious digital blood in this too, which is not my favorite thing to see, especially like in a slasher movie. Like it shouldn't be that hard to do a little bit of a squib. So that kind of pulls me out of it as well. Like I don't really have a lot on this one. I kind of found it the weakest of the segments. But I think, like you said, Tucker, it's the palate cleanser. It's the one. I think, and Steven, I guess maybe we'll let you start with the next segment, because I think, Rachel, I saw your eyes do the same as me when Steven said the sick thing that happened to Emily when she was younger. This one's written by Simon Barrett, and this one's directed by Joe Swanberg, who's pulling a lot of duty on this one. Like, he's acting, he's directing, like, he's doing a lot. Like, he's showing that versatility here. But Steven, what was it about this one that didn't work for you?
I don't know. For me,
I'd want to warn you, like, Joe Swanberg will get in a boxing ring with critics that don't like his movies, and he will knock them out.
Okay, did I say least favorite? Because I meant absolute favorite. Sorry, that was I not clear there? Sorry,
easy mistake to make. Mistake to make.
Right? Yeah. Sorry. No, that's my fault. My bad. Sorry about that, guys. No, for this, I don't know what it is. I think the web chat format didn't work very well for me. Personally, I mean, that's kind of a personal preference thing, I guess. Mm-hmm. Just didn't I didn't like that, the back and forth of it all. It felt very limiting. It felt like this is a found footage movie, but we're going to like completely narrow our field of focus so much that we're just seeing basically as much of our main characters as we can see of each other right now.
And then I think they stretch that too, Steve. I'm with you on this. I think they kind of stretch it beyond believability when they are at that point. The only time that you could really video chat is if you had like a Mac computer and you literally had FaceTime on your computer.
Right.
We had iPhones and shit, but it wasn't a huge deal, really.
No, Skype was a thing. Skype was a thing.
Okay, but what I'm saying is this segment, it's two people on what I'm assuming are laptop computers, because this lady carries it all through her house. Right. I'm assuming it's a laptop. And that's where, like, I like this segment a lot because there's a lot of things it does really, really well. But it does kind of throw me off a bit just because is she going to, like, is she just carrying her laptop through her house outstretched in front of her?
Yes.
Like, and just the thought of that is just kind of takes me out of it and makes me laugh.
Same.
See some lady being like,
same.
You do what you have to do. That's what people do. Days. Yeah.
But that's what people did back
to that extent, though.
Yes.
To that
extent,
it's
just a little apartment. Yes. It's not like she's taking it to Target. You know, she's not like taking it on a Target run with her. You know,
I suppose.
So
what you say has merit, even though I disagree.
No, but yeah, I think that. As I was watching it, I was like, how is this a found footage movie? And then we get to the scene where she's carrying her laptop through the house. And I'm just kind of like, I guess, shrug wildly, like, I suppose. And look,
I had a MacBook Pro in 2012, and those suckers were a lot heavier than they are now. This thing weighs like probably 10 times less than the one I had in 2012. Sorry, Steven, go ahead.
No, I was very confused by the ending. Apparently, I looked it up online, and they're supposed to be aliens, and I did not get that at all.
Dude. Yeah.
See, that's one of the things I like about it, though. I like the fact that, like, it's a short segment, so they're not going to give you, like, every single bit of information that, like, you're going to have to do some work yourself to put the pieces together. And whatever explanation you come up with is going to be okay. Like, you know, at first you think it's ghosts, and then you realize there's a couple points in it when you see the quote unquote children and their eyes do that, like they go huge and black, like you think of the typical alien eyes, and then they become like little children again. And there's little things too where you're like, well, wait a minute. I thought he wasn't recording this whole time. And it's like, well, yes, he also said, you know, he was in Michigan. Like, he's lying. Like, you really can't believe anything.
Room.
Yeah. And this whole thing was recorded on Skype. They actually did record this. So they did use the tech. And that was one of the worries that they had was like, how is this going to translate? Like, are the codecs that are available going to translate when we're showing this thing, you know, in theaters or on like big TVs at home? Is that going to work? And I find it interesting because, you know, before Host, which became you know, pretty much a sensation in 2020 when we were all locked down, but even before Unfriended, which came out, I think like 2 years after this this is the first example of like using kind of like video chat in a movie that I can think of. I thought it was pretty effective here. I thought overall, like it worked as a segment.
I think it's really smart too. The fact to break up sort of the handheld camcorder style with something a little bit different that gives you the same effect, that still plays into the time, still plays into the idea, still, fits the mold of what this is, but breaks up the monotony of that style just a little bit. I also love that this is this the one where it's not a woman who's the big bad, or like one of like an evil character, a murderer in some capacity. This is the only segment where the dude is actually a bad guy. So I appreciate that. This whole thing
fair.
is not
very fair.
Not framing all of the women as terrible. Although, it's not great that she's portrayed as being crazy, basically, when we know that he has been manipulating her for seemingly a very long time. They talk about being kids, going to high school together, the fact that he's been involved in her life for so long, and she talks about her accident. And so he's been, grooming's not the right word, but he's been using her, gaslighting her and using her for whatever this mission, whatever this, alien agenda is for decades.
But she's not crazy. I mean,
she's not crazy. That's the thing. And so
she might be at the end of this if he keeps fucking with her, honestly. Yeah. Like, that'll drive somebody nuts.
And that moment where we see her arm is executed so brilliantly.
Oh, it's so
similarly,
good.
It feels like a Ty West kind of thing where it's just like everything's going
you don't
along,
expect it to be so bad.
Think it's a ghost thing, and then she pulls up her arm and it's just like, oh my god.
Yes.
And then she goes for the
like a quarter size.
Yeah.
Quarter size hole in this girl's arm.
The barbecue fork, and she's like, there's something in there. And it's also very
no, girl, stop.
Oh, it's horrible. And then it's chilling to think about the fact that he's telling her to stop, not really because he cares about her, but the fact that she might discover the tracking device in her arm. And so he doesn't want her to actually dig it out. So he's telling her, like, stop, you're doing it again. Like, remember what happened with your leg. Like, you got to clean it out. Just leave it alone. I'll be there. It's horrifying on every level.
And I think one of the really good things about that moment is at that point, like, he hasn't revealed himself yet, so you don't know. Like, he does a really good job of playing as sympathetic and playing, like, the sympathetic partner throughout most of the... Like, it's not until he opens the door. That's a genuinely shocking moment and a genuinely shocking reveal when that happens, when you're like, what the... It's like the Spanish Inquisition. Like, nobody expects it. And
cheap weapons are surprise.
Like
surprise and fear.
So... Yeah. When she goes and gets the barbecue fork, number one, it plays as great gallows humor. Like, it's funny, gross and disgusting, but also really funny.
Right.
But also, like, you are on his side in that moment. Like, you see him as like a sympathetic partner where you're like, he's trying to stick up for her. And that makes, like, the reveal all the better, I think, later on. So I think the segment really works. I really enjoy it for that. All of it just comes together.
And that moment when she's talking about, like, I don't know why you would want to be with me. I don't know what I did to deserve. And he says something that could be perceived as really sweet. He's like, stop it. Like, you act like I have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
And then you find out later.
That could be taken a couple different ways. Especially when you know what's actually going on.
No, exactly. That's the thing. When you look back on it, it's like, oh, he doesn't have a choice in the matter. It's not that, like, I can't, like, I love you. There's no other option for me. It's like, oh no, he actually just doesn't have a choice in the matter. That's awful. It's so bad.
Well, I think it's even before you know the twist, that comes off as a little strange because you could interpret that a few different ways. Like, if somebody said that to me, I would kind of pause for a second and try to figure out exactly what they were trying to say.
Well, and he never says, I love you back. He's never acknowledging or reciprocating in any actual way that carries weight. Yeah, it's very interesting to watch this again once you know how everything plays out.
So,
well, if I can
you first, Tucker.
Oh, thank you so much. What you were saying earlier, Rachel, about like,
okay, Tucker, that's enough. Moving on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sweet. Yeah. No, what you were saying earlier about like all the antagonists in this film being female, I think that actually this does kind of follow the rest of it, because the killers in all these other segments may be female, but I don't think they're the worst people in those segments. I think in a lot of those segments, those dudes are a lot worse than the women that are killing them.
1,000%.
Despite the fact that they're killing them.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. I'm not saying they're like actual like evil bad characters.
Oh, gotcha.
It's just interesting that the situation is not amped up because of a woman. Like the violence isn't happening because of a woman. This is the one where she's horribly innocent and being just completely manipulated into thinking she's the crazy one.
Right. Gotcha.
So I'm pulling this out of nowhere, and I admit that I'm pulling this out of left field. There's something about Joe Swanberg where he either plays a dirtbag, like a subtle dirtbag. He does it in Your Next. He does it in his role here. He does it in a number of roles. He's like one of the forerunners of like the mumblecore film movement. He's like made a ton of movies, and he seems to have a lane that he likes to stick in. It's like him and Mark Duplass, really, that are like really the forerunners of this movement. There's just something about Swanberg that he seems a little bit too comfortable being creepy. And maybe it's because this style of movie is so rooted in improv and so rooted in naturalism that you sometimes wonder, and maybe he's just like a very gifted performer and like very gifted in creating this kind of character, but it almost, you get to a point where you're like, is there just, and there's no dirt on this guy. I hate even suggesting, because there's nothing where there's like, here are some stories that have come out. It's like not one of those situations, but you do start to wonder when there's like that much, when you play a role that often and you have that kind of lane where you're like, are you just like, why are you so comfortable as this just like right of center kind of misogynistic creep? It's just something about him that rubs me the wrong way.
He has a very punchable face.
It's a smugness, right?
Well, I just think he's got like kind of like baby boy face, where no matter how old he's going to get, he's going to look like, you know, a young waspy guy who should be on like a rowing team, you know, talented Mr. Ripley style, where it's like he just looks like a little cherub baby. And so anything that he does that's not that, it's interesting. And so I think he plays up with that. And I have to imagine, too, when people are like, oh, what do you do? Like, oh, I make movies. Oh, what kind of movies? Oh, like horror movies. People are like, you? What? Like, you don't look like that. Whereas you look at Eli Roth, you look at even like Ty West, and you're like, okay, yeah, you make horror movies. Like, that makes sense to me. But you look at Joe Swanberg, and it's a little bit, you wouldn't expect that from him, just judging on him physically.
Yeah. And that's weird that you mentioned that, because I was trying to find a way to push this other film in here and talk about it for a second, and now I found it, because our boy Joe Swanberg directed a movie called Drinking Buddies. Oh, Drinking Buddies is a romantic comedy that Ty West is just a main character in.
Yeah, it's interesting.
He's just in it as a main character. Like, Ty West's acting resume, not that long, but he's just in this independent romantic comedy with the dude from Office Space, and they're all just having a really good time.
And Anna Kendrick, Olivia Wilde.
I wonder if Swanberg was in a frat. He strikes me as somebody, like maybe he's experienced that, and, you know, just was, you know, an observer, kind of, just sort of took it all in, didn't necessarily go by that, but it's just kind of absorbed
that's one
that
of the,
culture.
Like
that's
the
one of the
kind
two
of guy
things
that could say like, you know, like we know that like that's not the best behavior. We don't condone it, but that was just boys being boys back then.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like he would kind of like chalk it up to like, that's just what it was like. But, you know, we don't condone it now, but what are you
saying? If she's passed out, you don't go through with it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, we're saying that. Right. Filming it without their consent with spy glasses is okay, but not if they're passed out.
Right.
excellent.
Wowzers.
It's just and again, it's nothing I can put a finger on concrete, whereas like Mark Duplass can give two of the most disturbing performances ever in Creep, and he plays a complete dirtbag in that long-running sitcom The League. And I'm like, yeah, Mark Duplass, I would hang out with that guy in a moment. He seems awesome. Like, there's just nothing
like
about him.
And he sounds like a creep.
Yeah.
He's already has that going for him. Where, I think Swanberg is playing against type more often than not.
All right. Well, that brings us to our last segment, 1031-98, which were helmed by Radio Silence. So I, mentioned earlier they were newcomers at this point. Like, they had not had a feature out at this point, and they would go on, I would say, to really maybe outside of Wingard now. And it was a long road for Wingard. Like, there were a lot of ups and downs for him. They've done Ready or Not, Scream 5 and 6, Abigail. Like, they've probably had the most successful mainstream career of any of the directors of VHS, and like one that isn't just rooted in one thing. Like, they've had success across like a number of different movies and titles at this point. And I'm going to say, like, I feel like they saved the best for last with this segment. Like, I love this segment. It's so much fun. And it's probably the only one where like the guys in this one, like you actually can root for them. Like, they're not jerk offs in this one. They're actually just kind of dopey.
They're just doofuses.
Yeah. They're like puppy dogs. Just really it. Like, they're just like big giant puppies.
Yeah, they seem like just a general nice group of friends having fun, going to a Halloween party. I love the idea of the Teddy Cam, like nanny cam costume. Also, such a brilliant way to incorporate the found footage element into this. Absolutely brilliant. It's a little silly that, like, oh, there's an actual camera. Like, it's not just like you say you're a nanny cam and like a fake camera. It's like, no, it's a real camera that's recording the whole time.
And you want to talk about heavy, like that would have been like probably a VHS-C or mini DV camera back then.
Those in 98.
Yeah, those would have been
a high
heavy.
8 maybe at the smallest. Like,
So you're going to have like, and those, if you had like a mini DV, like those are maybe record like an hour. So every like hour or so, he's switching out tapes throughout the night, which I think is great.
That's where the cuts are, right?
Yeah. So you imagine like, that's probably a good 7 or 8 pounds, like sitting in your head all night long as you're running around.
Yeah, I love everything about this segment. I love the setup. I love the guys that are in it. And not like we get to know them or anything, but I enjoy their dynamic, and I enjoy just how normal they are and not disgusting human beings that they seem like, and how they they want to actually help this woman. And I love this house. It's funny. I feel like I went to a Halloween party in a house pretty much exactly like this. But there was an actual party there, so there was not any rituals or any crazy things going on.
It wasn't completely empty, but for the exorcism in the attic.
Yeah, but I think it's so funny how they get in there, and at first they're like, "Where's the party? I don't understand." And then how everything they think is happening is, "Oh, this is part of it. This is like a fun, like funny
They're
Halloween,
so positive,
like, haunted house kind of thing." And how they're just going with it for an absurdly long time, but I don't care. I think it is really effective and both creepy and funny at the same time, because I think the effects actually and the way that those sort of scares are executed very well, especially considering kind of, I'm assuming a minimal sort of budget for this, and comparing it to all the other segments that we get, this seems like the most technically savvy segment that we get.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of digital effects in this one for sure, and for the most part, they're pulled off pretty well.
Agreed.
I think the entire budget for this film is $1 million.
Yeah. And to your point, they're so optimistic. Like when they finally make their way to the attic, and there's like 5 people in there, none of whom they recognize. And there's obviously some sort of like ritual sacrifice going on. they are still like, oh, this must be part of it too. And they start chanting. And when everybody stops, they're still chanting. And they're just like really into it. Like there's just something so positive about these guys. You're like, man, I hope these guys get out of it. I really hope, somehow, some way they make their way through this. And you're right. They're the only ones, like, they go back for the girl, like, hey, we have to rescue her, and
that's the realistic part, is that they go back. Because like in something that wasn't as interested in doing something realistic, they would just immediately be like, we have to get her. But no, they're scared as shit, because that's what you would be. Initially, you would be like, let's get the fuck out of here. And only be halfway through the house, you'd be like, you know what? We should probably go get that girl, though.
Yeah.
Because that's the way your brain works. Self-preservation, and then, oh, shit, we should probably go help that girl.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that part, for sure.
And there were a lot of, like, fun little touches throughout it, like the roommate who wants nothing to do with Halloween, and he's just like, at midnight everything in here is coming down, right? And he's like, yep, not a problem. It's like, you should come out with us. And the guy doesn't even respond. Just as like deadpan, no response. And you just feel how much this guy hates his roommate for like absolutely no reason whatsoever. But it just also takes you back to a time like, oh yeah, you couldn't just pull up any address on your phone and get there without any problem at all. Like, it was very easy to get lost and mix up streets and have no idea where you're going. And then just pointing out the train about 10 minutes before it's going to occur again later on down the road. I thought it was a nice little like subtle way to kind of point out danger that's going to occur later. Chewy, what were your thoughts on this one? You muted yourself. You've gone speechless.
Oh, what? How's that
You're
again?
speechless, dude.
Sorry.
You're mute.
I mean,
I was going to speak for you. That was going to be fun.
That would have been interesting for sure. No, I like this one.
I'm Steven. I'm the biggest idiot in the world.
While swinging a cat around I got one around here somewhere. Hang on.
In a dunce hat, in a diaper,
Tucker, you know me too well. No, I had a lot of fun with this one. I love that it feels a lot more lighthearted in a very weird way. And I think it's just because after an entire movie full of very, very terrible people, there's some people that are likable, and you just get to hang out with the likable guys. And they're like I said before, they're doofuses. They're kind of idiots, and they're just trying to have a good time. But not at the expense of anyone else, which is what so many other people in this movie are wanting to have a good time at someone else's expense. And these guys are just four friends who are going to go to a Halloween party and goof around. I thought the driver was dressed as Han Solo, and then I saw the pants, and I was like, what is this? And then he put the pirate hat on. I was like, oh, okay, he's a pirate. Got it. Okay. I saw the vest. I saw the white shirt. I'm like, Han Solo, he's driving. That's really funny. And then I saw the pants, and I was like, I don't know what this is. So pirate hat tied a lot of that together. And yeah, I think it helps that these guys actually are friends. Like that's radio silence, right? They're kind of playing versions of themselves. And I think a lot of that dialogue felt very natural and probably improvised on the spot. They're like, okay, in this scene, we have to do this, this, and this. All right, we're just going to have fun. And they're just like four friends riffing on each other. And I really like that. And then when the danger comes up, it feels more realistic in that moment because, again, these guys are very believable. Their relationship is very believable and very lived in. So, yeah, if not the best one of the best ones in this movie, for no other reason than that, really. And it ends on a high note, and I like that. You leave on your best foot. Like you start strong, you end strong. The middle can get kind of murky, but as long as you end strong, we're good. And that's how you compose an anthology or anything where you got vignettes. So I think that worked really well.
Yep.
Yeah. There is an alternate ending to this one, which I wish they used because I think it is even stronger. So
I agree.
The way this ends, it's the way like pretty much every found footage movie ends. Like the train comes, smashes into the car, and then like we fade to credits. The alternate ending rather than have that happen, like they managed to get out of the car seconds before the train hits them. And when they get out of the car, instead of like being completely freaked out and scared and terrified, as the train smashes the dude's car to bits, like that still happens. They're just not in it.
Right.
They're just completely like, whoa, what a wild and crazy night. That was so much fun. Like, whoa, what a party, man. Like, who could have seen that coming? And they're like, oh, wait, I know where we are now. Haha, we're going to talk about, like, they're just like super doofusy. Yeah. And I love it. I don't know why they wouldn't have used, that would have been such an awesome note to go out on. To me, it's the better ending. It just made me laugh my ass off. And it just felt like in character as well. It didn't feel like a cheat. And it would have been something different. I mean, because every found footage movie kind of ends the same. They even, like in the commentary, they even said, like when the wraparound segment that ends right before this segment starts, like people got up and started leaving the theater because it's your typical like guy being chased down by the big bad, camera hits the ground, fade to black. It's like, oh, okay, it's over. People started to file out not knowing there was like another segment left because it was such a bog standard ending.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. To have that ending, though, it is like stark contrast to everything we get before.
But that's why I would love it, just to give it that contrast.
Saying, yeah, I agree. It's fun, and like I appreciate that, but I can see why they're like, well, that doesn't actually fit with anything that came before, and especially the wraparound. Also, I don't understand like the whole zombie kind of part of the wraparound with the guy. I feel like that was a big misstep. I don't know why they went to that level. It should have. I don't know.
Drugs.
I feel like they didn't have any other ideas.
They had to kill off these guys, but.
Well, and you needed a payoff because once you see that guy in the chair, you know he's not dead. Especially with the way that they shoot him, he's always in the background. You know he's going to be missing at some point because we've seen horror movies,
right?
Yeah, but there's also like a guy lurking in like the basement, like moving around. Like I feel like they could have. I just feel like there was something else they could have done that didn't have to be almost like supernatural or crazy. Agreed. It could have just been like the guy woke up and realized these guys were in his house stealing his snuff videos. Like it could have been as simple as that. And I feel like that would have been more in line with everything else that had happened. Like maybe he was just drunk and passed out or whatever, but the zombie thing did not fit. So I see why they chose the ending because it does feel more bleak and just kind of meaner, you know, which kind of fits in with everything else that comes before it. But yeah, it would have been nice to end on.
What the guys in the wraparound didn't realize about the house was
it's a trap.
No, we got it.
Play? Okay,
we got it.
Did not hear it in my end.
So your end?
I did not hear the Admiral Akbar. It's a trap.
Oh, gotcha. We heard it for sure.
Okay.
We get it, Mike. We get
excellent.
it.
It's my favorite. Just give me this one bit.
Look,
just give me this one.
You're a nerd. It's fine.
Oh yeah, we know that.
Look, everybody. He's a nerd. See, nobody cares.
I care.
No, I tease. I
We're
tease, Mike.
all
I tease.
Nerds. Hate to break
it.
Tucker,
welcome to your one and only appearance on the show.
Yes. I'm retiring on top.
Thanks for burning that bridge.
Yes.
Yeah, I also think the alternate ending to the radio silence segment, it kind of goes a long way to explaining how they use characters in like their Scream movies, because like no one of importance aside from Dewey dies in any of their Scream movies. You have
no matter
like
how many times they get stabbed.
Yeah.
Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character is essentially beheaded, and at the end of each movie, he comes back like, it's a flesh wound. Like he's totally fine by the end. Like Mesa, or is it Mesa Gooding? I'm just calling him Cuba Gooding.
I was going to say it's
Mesa
not
Gooding.
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Definitely not Cuba, but yeah.
Same difference. Fruit of his
right?
lens,
Same thing.
Yeah, they also directed Jerry Maguire, in case you didn't know.
So
you don't remember that scene in Jerry Maguire?
There were so many beheadings in Jerry Maguire. There was just
show me the decapitation
at the director's cut. But also, like, they just don't kill off their characters. Like, they fall really in love with their characters.
Right.
All right.
To their detriment sometimes, I think.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got it. I think we can put VHS to bed unless there's any other thoughts that I'm missing here.
I did want to say something about that alternate ending just real quick, if I may.
Absolutely.
I think that it works really well as an alternate ending because I think it's a little too silly and unbelievable that those guys are that dumb that after all that they would think, oh, we're still having a haunted house time and everything. And also I think the ending that was included, even though we like those characters, it's the ending that works for the story. For me, at least. I do like the alternate ending. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot like the original ending of Army of Darkness. It's a lot of fun, but I'm glad it's not the actual ending.
Yeah. Well, listen, I hate it when something doesn't commit to the bit or doesn't lean into it. It's like, why did you pull your punch? Like, why did you feel like so nervous to do that? And I feel like that would have been, oh, we can't. It's too mean. Oh, that's too much of a downer. And so I'm glad they committed to the bit. I will say that about this movie. I don't like everything that happens. I don't agree with everything that's presented, but I still like this movie overall and appreciate that they committed to the bit that they were going for. And I feel like they were successful in delivering that bit, however uncomfortable it can be at times. Yeah. And I can understand why they got more because we get so many incredible filmmakers out of this. It's such an interesting way to see these because it's low stakes, but they can also show their interesting ideas. It's got to be a great thing for some of these. And I'm sure we'll see that as we go on, these early filmmakers to have on their resume and just show things as proof of concept or put on their reel or whatever. And so overall, I think it's successful, even if it's mean and gross.
It's like the reverse Masters of Horror, these movies. We're like Masters of Horror, that show was like established horror directors making short films and stuff. This is the new blood.
It's like the Muppet Babies version.
Yes, it is. Woo! That was for you, Steven.
Thank you.
I mean, if the Muppet Baby was like 5 times more sexual assaulty,
right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Every 10 minutes, yeah.
I mean, maybe that's the reason. Maybe Skeeter got killed off, and that's the reason why she's not in the Muppet Show. Who knows?
Who knows where Skeeter is? Nobody.
All right.
She moved to France.
Well, we don't know where Skeeter is, but let's find out where our co-hosts are. Steven and Tucker, what do the two of you have going on with Disenfranchised this month?
Well, June is kind of a mixed bag. We're just doing some fun stuff. We just recorded an episode on Michael Mann's Manhunter, and we had our good friend Ariel Power-Schaub on to talk about the 2006 film Stay Alive. This is dropping, I think, end of June. Right? Is that right, Mike?
Sure.
So
maybe
I don't know why you're asking me because I'm not the host of. This show, my
episode,
show,
yeah.
I thought you meant your show. I thought when your show was
this is
dropping.
I'm wanting to know what I need to tease coming up. So
okay, this drops the 22nd or 23rd.
Okay,
or the 24th.
So
one of those days, end of June.
We
could let week to go in June.
All right. So then
you could make it July.
Sure. Well, why
not August?
In July.
Well, let's keep going. Let's do Christmas.
Out.
Drop it at Christmas.
Coming up in July, we've got another theme month where we're covering Tucker. I know you're excited about this one. What are we covering in July?
We're just doing Will Smith movies. That's all.
We're getting jiggy in July with Will Smith with the Fresh Prince.
No big deal. You guys, I saw that new Bad Boys. It's good as hell. Not as good as the third one, but it's still pretty good.
There you go.
Just saying.
You heard it here first.
Real good.
Excellent. That would be a lot of fun. So like stuff like Wild Wild West and Hitch things.
Best Christmas movie ever.
Yeah, we're doing Wild Wild West. I think we're doing Bright. We're doing Hancock, and there's a fourth one. Oh, After Earth, the M. Night Shyamalan movie he did with his kid.
Man, we couldn't have picked something better. Dang.
Well, these are the non-Will. Like you can't do Independence Day. I mean, you can't.
That one got a sequel.
But Hancock is good, and Wild Wild West is a lot of fun.
I mean, you can't do Ali.
Boy, do I have a lot of fun with it.
I guess you could do Ali. I mean, because it's only
you couldn't be weird, but like,
super weird. Be very strange.
What was the one? His first movie with Stockard Channing, where he plays the gay con man.
6 Degrees of Separation.
Yes. Thank you. Let's do that one. Let's talk about that one. That's a loaded movie.
That is a loaded movie.
Ooh,
how would that fit into franchises, though?
It wouldn't.
Doesn't matter. We'd figure it out. We'd fudge it.
We've been known to fudge lines once or twice.
Fair enough.
If there's ever a straight up in July, that's what we'll do.
There you go.
All right. Excellent. And so that is July, is Will Smith July. He used to be the king. I mean, literally there was a stretch where every July 4th weekend, that's when a new Will Smith movie dropped.
That's why we're doing it in July.
Yeah, dude.
Excellent. Okay.
That's the whole thing.
And we used to be a country that built things and did things.
Correct.
And
we sure did.
It went all downhill when Will Smith stopped ruling the box office.
Yeah. Wild Wild West. I'm looking right at you.
Yep.
That's not that movie's fault. Do you see what it opened up against? We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. Calm down.
Table that. Don't burn content on other podcasts.
So the bad guy in Wild Wild West was supposed to be the bad guy in Superman Returns, correct?
The giant spider was.
Yeah.
Where that came from.
Made you burn that
giant
content.
mechanical
All right,
spider.
Rachel, what's going on? What's going on with Halloweenies and Losers Club, and what are you writing about? Like, what's going on with your columns right now?
Yeah, so over on Halloweenies, we are chugging away through Alien franchise. So June, you're going to get Prometheus. We're starting a new era of the Alien franchise.
The second best film in the series.
Okay. We'll go with that.
Hard to disagree, but you do you.
Okay. We're all entitled to our own opinions. And so Prometheus will be dropping part 1 at least at the very end of June. So very excited to do that. Over on the Losers Club, they're going to keep things nice and light and talk about Revival. I'm not on those episodes, but an incredible book. So I encourage people, if you're a fan of that, those episodes will be dropping. And then, and The Girls on the Boys, season 4 of The Boys is here, coming out. So we're going to be diving into that. And we've also been covering Gen V, which is actually surprisingly good. So that's been a lot of fun to cover that as well. Yeah. And then writing-wise, I should have some stuff coming out, hopefully, on Bloody Disgusting here in a little bit. And then over on Dread Central, we'll have a Terror on the Turntable dropping in July as well. So and I'll post all that to my socials. So if anybody wants to follow me there, that's always where you can find that.
Revival is amazing. I think that's like one of King's most terrifying books. The ending of that book is nightmare fuel. Absolutely keeps me up at night thinking about the end of that book.
Yep.
So
says the guy who likes Prometheus.
Yeah.
Prometheus is amazing.
I'm teasing, Mike.
Prometheus is so good.
Your thoughts are valid. I just
one day I'm going to do this show with people that somewhat agree.
I don't think it's bad. Like spoiler alert for those.
I'd put it at number 3.
So I wasn't that far off,
no.
Stephen. What do you have as your number 2? Is it Requiem? Is it Alien Predator Requiem?
Oh God, no. That may be one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Those don't count. They're out of continuity.
No, my number 2 is, depending on what day you ask me, probably one of the first two.
Saturday.
But okay, so James Cameron's Aliens is my number 2.
There you go. Got it.
I'm not.
Sometimes you have to lead Steven to his place he needs to go.
I'm just not as big on Aliens as most people. I know I'm in the minority there, but come on, Steven. I have it like in the middle.
Yeah, I think that movie fucking rips, and
fair enough.
Yeah.
Most people do. I know I'm in the minority there. Anyway, that is our episode on VHS. So please make sure that you are subscribing, rating, and reviewing us wherever you get your podcast. Goes a long way to helping us out. If you haven't already, consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/podandthependulum, where you can get all of our bonus content. I believe this month we're going to record on in the Violent Nature. I don't know. We'll cut this part out.
In the Valley of Violence?
No. The new slasher film. And I just my mind is mush right now. So if you haven't already, please consider becoming a patron by going to patreon.com/podandthependulum, where you can get all of our bonus content. And it goes a long way to keeping the lights on and the doors afloat here. We'll be back next week with VHS 2. I have no idea who's on for that episode. I don't think anyone.
No one right now.
Yet.
Yeah.
So excellent. So everybody will agree with me because I'll just be doing my own show.
Yeah.
Nobody will make fun of me, and it will be lovely. It will be finally. It'll just be 2 hours.
I'll join you. I'll join you and challenge everything you say.
Yeah.
No, that sounds like fun.
2 hours of me just not even talking about the movie, just what I think of all my co-hosts. Just here's what I really think.
Fuck you, you're cool.
Didn't you
Fuck
do that on the Saw 6 episode already?
We did something in one of the Saw episodes where
the merry-go-round, yeah.
The merry-go-round, who we would save.
Yeah.
And people got mad that I asked that during the episode. And I just felt like that was
I wasn't going to make it.
I just felt that was a fair question. I think, Rachel, you were saved.
Yes.
And I feel like Ari, I also
Yes,
saved.
Those were the two that made it.
Yeah.
The rest of us got shot in the face.
Everyone else got a buckshot to the gut. So, and I stand by, especially after this episode.
I
stand by those choices. So, all right, everybody. Have a great week. Take care. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back with VHS 2. This time it's personal.